Welcome to the video, guys. Today we're talking about mixing. It's gonna be way more in depth. If you're new to this channel, I'm currently at the end of a series taking you from beginner to pro in music production, and this is a different style for me. I'm doing my best to intentionally slow things down so that you guys can get an in-depth look into my process and take away anything you can, both practically and also the mentality behind these things that I'm sharing with you. Once again, this is video 10. And we're talking about mixing, and we're gonna go pretty in depth today. If you haven't seen my other video on mixing, this one is going to build on top of that one. The first one, which was on mixing for people who just want to make music, you just want to put songs out, you just want to wrap it up as quickly as possible, gives you the very bare essentials that you need to mix a track. But of course, as we know, there's so much more that you can do. I understand that on YouTube, there's so many amazing tutorials on mixing, different approaches to this. In this video, you're specifically gonna hear my approach to mixing, as I'm gonna walk you through mixing a track from start to finish, my thought process and mentality behind every single detail, really what I'm listening for and what I like to hear in a mix. So this isn't the end-all way to mix a song, but it's my way. I think it's a good way, and I hope that you can learn what you need to learn from it. So enjoy. We'll see you back at the studio. All right, we are back. We're in the studio. It's loud. There's a AC or something running right behind me. So I apologize for the noise. Again, the style of video, we're laid back, we're conversational. As you can see, I have some notes here on my process, and I have 3 basic steps in what I do, which is fix, mix, and then enhance. Of course, I tend to want to go with just 1, 2, 3, then we're done. But in reality, like a lot of DIY projects, we're gonna go step 1, step 2, realize, oh, there's something else that we gotta do in step 1, then go back to step 2, and then go to step 3. So sometimes we have to bounce around a little bit, which is unfortunate, but for the most part, I really do try to keep it just 1, 2, 3. And then we're done. I'll give you a heads up as well that these steps get progressively more and more fun. Stick around though, because you can't get to the final steps without first doing the work of the first. There's a lot of mixing tutorials on the YouTube platform. I know because I learned from a lot of great ones. This tutorial is targeted specifically if you're a producer who's already dabbling in making music and now you just want to add mixing into that belt as well. So with that being said, let's jump into this. Right, so we hit X, bring up our mixing view here. As you guys can see, there's no plugins on any of these tracks except for the drum track, which is a stock Logic drum kit, and it comes built in with effects that are right on this track. But besides that, there's really nothing going on. This short beat is from our tutorial yesterday on creative layering, if you want to check that out. Again, all these videos are part of the series. Go back, go forward, find what's helpful and useful to you. Start from the beginning, watch the end of the series. I'm going to arrange it really quick, and then we'll listen to this track. Alright, I do have this arranged now. Let's give it a listen. Again, just a really simple track that we just made in the last video. Nothing fancy or complicated, but hopefully will give us a good grounds for jumping into mixing and learning my entire process today of how I tend to mix. So, step 1, fix. As you can tell, this project is not very well organized at all. You can, none of these regions are named or color-coded, so I'm going to start off by just naming everything. Next, I'm going to color-code everything. You can do that just by shift selecting everything, right-clicking, and then assign track color. So we could make these vocals really any color that we want. We'll just make them hot pink, because why not? And we'll select the regions. We'll make it the same, hot pink there. For our guitars, we'll select them all. Maybe we'll do some yellow for the guitars. And then for our drums, do some purple. And then the bass, let's do a nice blue. I have an unused track right here. There's nothing on it. So just delete that. Already, this is a lot easier to look at. It's a lot easier to see where my tracks are. I'm going to rearrange them and reorder them just so that I have my main tracks sitting on the top, and then my tracks that aren't as essential kind of towards the bottom. This really is up to your preference. Most mixing engineers would probably go drums, like kick is 1, snare 2, all the way up the line, and then maybe bass, and then kind of just stack the track sonically. For me, in this track, since there's not too much going on, I think the vocals are probably the most important. It's the thing that most people gravitate towards. So we got vocals, the next guitars, and then we'll have our drums and bass, since it comes in last. Now, when I press X, I can see my tracks are lined up exactly this way in Logic, which is super helpful for my brain, as I'm thinking the most important, kind of like reading, it's right here, and then we get less important as we go to the right. These might seem like small details, but remember, these steps build on each other, and they're all so important as we jump into making a great mix. Now it's time to jump into fixing the tracks. And what do I mean by fixing the tracks? Well, if we just listen to it, if you heard that transition there, you probably noticed there's a clicking noise that happened, because if you notice, these regions all come in right away, and right now there's no fades on the regions. So what I'm going to do to add fades to each of these regions is clicking on my tools up here, and I'm going to come down, select fade tool, select all of these regions, zoom in pretty far as we can go, and then we're going to add a small fade to one side, and we'll add another small fade to the right side. And if I played from right here again, you'll notice the click was completely gone. Next, we're going to route these tracks. There's lots of different ways to route tracks. It really depends on how you like to do it. But as I'm routing these, I'm basically figuring out what tracks do I want to process together. What tracks do I want to add the same effects to. So I know for a fact that all my vocals and all my guitars and my drums, I'm going to want to affect as the same track. So the way that I like to do this is I select all of my tracks, come down here to bus, and then I'll send them to their own bus. So now all my vocals are being sent to bus 2 right here, which right now is called aux4. Let's just rename that to Vox bus. You can hear when I solo the bus, it's just my voice, my chipmunked voice. I pitched up a couple. Alright, next we'll do the same thing with guitars. Highlight them all, come down to bus, send to bus 4, and this is our guitar bus. Same thing. You can hear all the guitars are coming through here. And that's really going to help us later. Do not neglect that step. It's super crucial. Thankfully, we already have all of our drums routed together in a bus. Logic does this, creates a, I believe it's called a summing stack, automatically for their drums, which is really nice. The final thing that we're going to do to fix the track is do some vocal tuning. This is kind of dipping into the mixing side too, since we're adding effects to the channel, but I would really consider this to be just fixing a vocal that's not totally in tune. This is completely up to taste, and I don't have to tune these vocals if I don't want to, but for the sake of this video, we'll just do a little bit of tuning. So if I come in here, I have my pitch correction added. You can find it right down here. And on this vocal, we're in the key of E. It's already sounding pretty good. I don't really think I have to adjust anything. So now I'm going to copy this onto all my vocals by holding Option, sliding this down. Now if we listen to all of our vocals, next, let's jump into actually starting to mix this. This is me from the future. Just had to add this clip in earlier because I realized I forgot to talk about leveling, which is probably the most basic kind of mixing. It's where you take your levels, these faders, and you move them up and down to have each instrument sit where you like it in the mix. And this is, of course, the most important and the first step that you should do. Totally forgot to mention it. I think mostly a lot of these more basic steps of setting levels, panning, EQ, we'll try to breeze through a little bit quicker because we already covered that in the first mixing tutorial we did in this series. And so this tutorial on mixing from me is going to focus more on the second half of this, like the enhancing effects and whatnot. But just know that that is a crucial first step. And if you haven't checked out that other video, you should probably go watch it before watching this one, just so that you can be aware of the fundamentals extra well. Alright, let's jump back into it. So for our mix, I'm focusing on the bare essentials to start. We're focused on panning, subtractive EQ, and compression. This is where these mix buses come in helpful. I don't really need to add effects to each specific vocal. So I'm going to come over to my vocal bus. We're just going to solo that for a second. You can already hear and see that there's panning going on over here. We have 3 vocals layered. So to get this wider effect, I pan the vocals hard left, hard right, and then there's one in the middle as well. So our panning decision was already made last week when we created the track as a creative decision. What I'm going to do now is add some EQ in here just to make sure that there's not any lower frequencies coming in that we don't want. I'm going to activate this high pass and we're going to roll off a bunch of low end. Sounds better. Again, with this first EQ, all we're doing is taking frequencies away that we don't want. We're not going to worry about adding anything. We're just simply going to take away the things that we don't need. As I'm listening, I can hear that there's some mud down here. We're going to turn that down a little bit. And then I can hear later when I'm hitting those high notes, mud's coming back. Yeah, right there. We're going to turn it down just a touch. Sounds pretty good. Let's listen to the guitars do something similar. Add an EQ in here. There is some mud coming in. That frequency right there, around 200, sounds really congested to me. Just a little too much, so we're just going to dip that back. Also right around here, I don't like that tone very much from the guitars, so I'm going to turn that down just a touch. We're also going to roll off some low frequencies with our high pass filter here. Not quite as much as the other vocals, but just enough that we don't have any unwanted noise coming in. Let's listen to that with our vocals. So before the EQ, as you can hear, that's quite a bit muddier with EQ. It's a lot more clear. by just subtracting some of that mud that really brings out more elements already that we can hear in this mix. You can hear that there's already some processing happening to these drums. The processing wasn't made in the mixing portion of building this track. It was made in the producing section. And so right now we're going to mix in the effects that have already been added on here. As you can see, there's some phaser turned up. Whoops, just turned it up a little bit more. There's some flanger and even some compression that's happening already. We're not going to worry about any of those because those were made, again, as creative choices, not as mixing choices. We're just going to worry about mixing the way that we need to on this track right now. So actually, to start on a completely fresh mixing channel, we're going to send this to a bus as well. Call it drum bus. There we go again, jumping back to step 1 when we're in the middle of step 2. It's alright. We're going to come up here, find our EQ, find some frequencies we don't like. So I just found that nasally frequency. Don't like it very much. It turned down. And there's one more frequency that's higher up here. So just a little bit unpleasant in these drums. So we're going to turn back. Maybe tame down some of the highs in general. Add the bass into this, make sure the bass and kick can work together. Right now, to make sure both the bass and the kick sit well in the mix together, kind of comparing their EQs back and forth. Here's my bass EQ. This is my drum bus EQ. So if I come down to the 808, you can see it's hitting pretty low, around 30 and 40, 30 to 60. And so I'm going to subtract that from the kick here. Yeah, it's really subtle, but I can hear a slight difference there. If I turn off that EQ for our drums, it just sounds a lot more untamed. Alright, now that we've added EQ to all these channels, we're going to start compressing things. We'll work our way backwards this time. I'm going to start with the drums. Come in here, add our compressor. At the top we have different styles of compression that can happen. They all do similar things for drums, like the Studio FET. We're going to turn this auto gain off. And then we're going to turn up the ratio pretty high, around 5.2, and then pull the threshold back. Sounds good. Let's listen to the bass. Once again, add some compression. I'm going to choose the vintage VCA for this bass. As you can hear, it's just taming some basic dynamics from both of these things. Let's do the same thing to our guitars. set the ratio pretty high for them. I think I actually might do, yeah, we'll actually do the opto. Turn down my ratio. It's really subtle compression. I don't want to overdo it. We're sitting around -3, -4, and that's totally fine with me. Finally, the vocals, let's compress those. Yeah, you can hear they need some compression. Turn off our auto gain. You can hear that helps a lot, taming the higher note. There we have it. We just accomplished the mixing portion of this, panning, levels, subtractive EQ, compression, and that takes us to the last spot that I really want to park and sit on for this video, which is track enhancement. It consists of a lot of different things, and a lot of it is up to taste. It's really subjective. It's up to you what you want to add. I could really be done with the mix right now and just call it good, but to me, I know that this isn't as good as I can get the track just yet, that we can do some more things to the audio to massage it out, and even adding some things to this to make it sound more pleasing in our ears, whatever we're listening on. So we'll jump into that right now. And the first thing that we're going to go over on each track is some additive EQ. As you noticed before, all we're doing with this channel EQ is we're subtracting, pulling down frequencies that we don't like. And now it's going to be time for us to add in frequencies that we do like. So if we come down to EQ, we're not going to choose any of these EQs. We're actually going to pick from our vintage EQ selection. Each one of these EQs has a different type of sound. It's modeled off of more classic analog EQ, which means that when we add it to our track, it's actually going to add some harmonic distortion to the signal right off the bat. It's going to be really subtle, but you'll be able to hear that this has a much different tone than just adding a channel EQ and trying to boost from there. So for our guitar bus, I'm going to add some graphic EQ to this, and we'll listen to hear what it does. So even just by turning it on, you can hear it colors it a little bit. If I turn up this drive, you can hear there's something going on with it. It's very subtle. Let's find some frequencies we want to boost. Turn down the volume just so that we have it balanced out. And that sounds good. So before a graphic EQ, if we listen to the guitars, it's a lot more dead, a lot more dry. And now with that on, it sounds a lot more lively. Let's add some vintage EQ to our vocals now. Come down here, I'm gonna add some tube EQ to these. And boost some high frequency. Once again, I'm going to pull back the volume. Do the same thing for our drums. We'll add some console EQ. kind of turn it way up to here where we're So as you can hear, these vintage style EQs are doing quite a bit to our tracks. It's not just turning up different frequencies, it's actually adding in distortion along with those frequencies. And that's harder to hear because it's not like a distortion pedal or plugin, so it's not very aggressive. It's a lot more subtle, but by adding this into the mix and adding EQ with this is actually kind of a cool effect where we get to really hone in the tone of these individual tracks. This is really a classic technique that a lot of engineers will use, but by using this overdrive, we're going to be able to bring out some of those lower frequencies and add in our own to make it sound a lot more full, especially if you're listening on headphones or earbuds. So let's listen to just the bass. Lots of low frequencies going on. Start to bring in this drive. I can already hear some more frequencies becoming present, more emphasized. Yeah, if we even look at our EQ, if I turn this down, a lot of these higher frequencies drop off. And as I boost this, you can see that there's more high frequency action that's happening. Alright, all these tracks are leveled, the tone is dialed in, the EQ and compression is sounding good, and the last thing that I like to do to a mix is really just give it some space. This is using reverb and delay, and again, for each part of this process I like to keep it as simple as I possibly can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select just our vocal and guitar bus. I'm going to send them to just a couple buses. 1, 2. We'll name one reverb, and we'll name our other delay. Sometimes I'll add more than one reverb and delay, but just for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to keep things really simple. Just add one in there. Then I'm going to send some of this vocal bus into bus 7, our reverb. To add the reverb to the track, we're going to come down here, reverb, and then we have a couple of different ones that we can choose from. I'll do the chroma verb for this video. And these settings, Logic did it right. Should be dry at 0 and wet should be 100, so that we just have the reverb happening. The reverb's soloed right now, so we'll just listen and I'll dial in some of the tone of this reverb, how I like it for this track. You can add a bit longer decay. And for details, we'll carve some lows out. We'll do the same thing for our delay. I'm going to send this signal into our delay bus, just the vocals. And we'll come over here, add in a stereo delay. And once again, Logic did it right. The output should be 100% left and right. Let's listen to this. So we're going to carve these frequencies a little bit. Sounds just a little bit better to me. So now if we listen to the vocals, Now we should be able to get to work toning in the reverb and delay. I'm not going to add any of these effects to the drums or to the bass, just because we want those to be a little bit more tight and punchy. But for the guitars and vocals, we'll just tastefully add these in a little bit. I hope that this tutorial was useful. If it was, do me a favor, press the YouTube buttons down below. Again, we're in the middle of a video series on my channel. We're in a different style, more laid back. I'm taking you in depth on my process from beginner to pro. So if you missed out any of the steps, I'd recommend going back, checking those out, and if not, totally fine. Have a great week. See you next time. Peace.